Good morning, everyone, or is it already the afternoon? Thank you very much for staying with us for this session. We promised to you a very interesting conversation. We're going to be talking today about the pursuit of competitiveness and resilience and CE auto industry makeover. You definitely know that the discussion about the makeover of auto industry in Central Europe is hardly a new topic. We had it for years, we knew about that it's coming for quite some time. But definitely what happened during COVID-19 is that this discussion became even more urgent. There's been even more pressure for us to find some urgent solution to the questions. And this pressure was either because of the increased pressure on automation or the changes in the demand and supply or the disruption of the supply chains. I have with me today a fantastic panel to discuss these issues, and you will see that it's especially well positioned to address a wide range of substances there. So I have with me today Andy Pommer, who is non-executive vice chairman at Innobat Auto, based in London. We have Richard Sulik, who is deputy prime minister and minister of economy of the Slovak Republic. And we also have with us Marek Sinkovic, who is CEO at Slovnaft Bratislava. My name is Elena Kucko. I'm director of the Globsec Policy Institute, and I'm going to be leading this conversation. To set up the discussion, I'm just going to quickly say one sentence. I was trying to count the number of challenges that we will have to address during this panel, and I even had to Google the word for it. We'll have quintuple challenge, which means five-fold challenge that we're going to be talking about today. First one, of course, is the issue of saving the economy, or giving an economy another rebirth and transforming it. Second, of course, we're going to be talking about making it green. Third, we're going to be talking about making it digital. Fourth, we're going to be talking about whether we want to manufacture or innovate and how to find the balance between these two. And of course, we'll definitely touch upon the social aspect and what kind of effect the transformation has. First of all, I would like to go to Minister Sulik and ask you, Minister, for your assessment, or I would ask you to share with us, how do you see and what are your plans about the transformation of auto industries in Slovakia?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will keep the 2 meters distance to have the possibility to speak without this. Thanks. Second reason is you will better understand my broken English. And now the question. So first of all, for the automobile industry are responsible the owners of this industry, shareholders and the management. It's not a role of state to say what they have to do, but we can support them. Slovak Republic is a country with most produced cars per inhabitant, per capita, and I see a lot of advantages and only one disadvantage. The disadvantage is that we are the dependence is too high. So if a crisis is coming, okay, we have perhaps a recession or a down in the economy, but this is happening 1 in 10 years. So it's much better 9 years to have income, to have employed people, and okay, 1 or 2 years in a decade we have a recession. The automobile industry in Slovakia is very strong also of that reason that we have a really big supplier environment. Perhaps 400 or 500 companies are producing something what the car industry needs. I am a little bit disappointed about the fact that we are not producing enough steel for the car industry. I don't know why, but perhaps I know why, and I hope could change. And now to your question, how can we support the automobile industry? I think in future, what people will need cars also in future. the personal mobility will be very important in 10 years, in 50 years. I cannot imagine that people will not need to be mobile. But we are facing a lot of changes, and the biggest changes will come in the area of engines. So today we have, or 10 years ago, we had diesel and gasoline, and in 10 years we will have batteries and whatever we will have in 20 or 50 years, but it will be still the cars. And okay, perhaps we will have shared cars, but despite of this, people will need cars, and we are producing the cars, and we have very good environment for producing these cars, not only because of the suppliers, but for example, of the building. And this can we do. We can support the car producers with well-educated young people. This is very important task for us, and we can support development of the new engines, and I think also here we are very strong. The last thing what the government can do is to improve the quality of entrepreneur environment. And we had already one package of more than 100 improvements, small improvements, but 100 times small improvement is in the result something bigger. Now we are working on the second package, perhaps with 400 or 500 improvements. So this can the government do, and I am convinced our government understands this task, and also I am convinced we will continue this. We have already 4 car producers. Perhaps in 1 or 2 years we will have a 5th one, perhaps Porsche, perhaps something else, but we should continue on this way to stay or to become more stronger automobile producer as Slovakia as a country like today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. We'll get back on the issues. And I want to go first to Anzi, because you mentioned the engines and the importance of batteries and how it's going to affect the market. And we've seen yesterday the first prototype of the battery unveiled here on this stage, and then this coming from London. Anzi, can you tell us what is your assessment that you have within the company? What is going to be the effect of your products, of the new batteries that you are developing on the auto industry and specifically in the region?
Thank you. It's great to hear a really forward-thinking government that cares about its industry. So congratulations, and I can see immediately why Slovakia is so successful in the cars per population. So well done. We're an industry under huge change. It's changing because of consumer needs. It's changing because of the needs of the planet. And it's having a big impact in terms of investment. You can look at the auto industry through the lens of shared mobility, connected mobility, autonomous mobility, and zero-emission mobility. And I guess in context here, we're talking about the journey towards net zero emissions or net zero carbon. The interesting part of that is that almost inevitably you have an industry that's moving towards greater need for batteries. In fact, it's unlikely that there will be any cars in the future that doesn't have some need of batteries, whether it's a fuel cell or whether it's a pure battery electric or whether it's a hybrid. So the other thing about batteries is that they don't like to travel so much, so you need short supply chains. So for any country that is today producing cars, I think there's two key ingredients, and we can say this whether we're talking about Slovakia or we're talking about the United Kingdom or indeed anywhere else, but you need 2 key ingredients. Number 1 is you need a supply chain that includes a battery. It's a safe bet. It's basically part of that future. And if you don't have that industry, then there's a very good chance that car making will move out of your country and somewhere else. Secondly, you need to invest in the technology and indeed in R&D, because R&D makes an industry sticky. It's relatively easy if you're just assembling cars that the next platform comes along and the car maker will move to the next low-cost economy. But if you've invested in R&D, the tendency is that keeps the industry in the country. So one of the things that attracted me to Inabat in particular was exactly satisfying those 2 points. There was a great car industry in the region. Creating a battery in the region helps reduce the length of the supply chain. And there's the investment in those skills, which will make the technology very sticky. And as I say, my compliments, Deputy Prime Minister, that is an extraordinarily smart strategy.
Sorry?
Extraordinarily smart strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andy. And we'll get back on the point of R&D. But I want to first go to Marek Sinkovic. And we're talking now about the innovation, about the glorious future with the batteries and digital technology, and also the green future. But inevitably, any transition implies that there are those who are losing in the process. And arguably, currently, the oil refinery and the producing of fuels is something that might not have the brightest future as we stand now. Could you please explain to us how you're seeing it and how the company is adapting?
Yes, thank you. You're right. For us, the car industry is a topic number one because cars are our biggest consumer. In every refinery, motor fuel production represents 60 to 80%. So if everything dramatic happens in the car industry, it will dramatic effects on oil industry, on its produce volumes, on its profitability. And we see dramatic changes, not only in that there are alternative fuels like biofuels or batteries, maybe in the future hydrogen, but we also see that standard internal combustion engines are every year increasing their efficiency. And beside that, we also see stricter rules coming from the legislation, regulations that practically hit every industry that has certain carbon footprint. So, yeah, we might be seen like dinosaurs from the past, and in reality, we are really fighting for the survival. And we already now, during the Corona times in April and in May, we saw dramatic demand drop for our fuels. There were weeks, days, where we were selling only 50% of our production, 60%. So there was, compared to last year, a significant drop. And okay, one could say that it is only temporary. Yes, it is temporary because now the demand came back. However, by 2040, it will be new normal. And for a refinery like we are, there are 100 refineries in Europe, which is heavily intensive on the assets. It's very difficult to keep profitability. We now recognize that our break-even point is 90%. So if the assets are not utilized at least 90%, then we are, or you are, every refinery is always in the red figures. So it means that it can happen that many refineries will be closed within the next 5-10 years, but there will be still many cars with fossil engine on the roads. And it can be very detrimental to the energy security of some countries where there is only 1 or 2 refineries, because these refineries should be closed because of the economics, but the governments will not allow to be closed because of the energy security, because then can be problem to bring fuels to that country if the refinery will be shut. So, and I'm not speaking about the fiscal impacts of closing a refinery. I have hired new production director, and he came from the Shell Denmark, from the small refinery, to Slonaft, leading our production department, and he told me, Marek, in Denmark we calculated, our technical engineer calculated that behind the refinery there are directly, indirectly 100,000 people linked. Employees, contractors, households, but also those people who are, let's say, sitting somewhere in the office and giving certain permissions, stamps, sending some statistics, doing some reports, observing, etc. So there is a huge impact on the employment, huge impact on taxes, unpaid taxes, on wages, on social contributions. So how I see the future of the refining industry is that in Europe there will be two groups of refiners. One group will simply do nothing. They will do only minimal maintenance, minimal investments, and they will close the refinery tomorrow. Tomorrow means 2025, 2030. Already this week, one Finland refinery announced that they will close their operation because they do not see the demand. And there will be second group of refineries where we also would like to belong, and we would like to be last standing refinery on the market till the very last moment. But in the meantime, we would like to change our production portfolio, to go from the motor fuels to another type of production. Most of the refineries will opt for being more chemical companies, more chemical producers than motor fuel producers. And that is the solution. On the other side, this will cost billions of euros. And we will ask for some financial help, to be honest. Not only, but also other refineries. We in Slovnaft are quite confident that we would be able to remain a diamond. Maybe you know or not, but Slovnaft is one of the top 3 most complex and best refineries in Europe. So we have certain good prerequisites to stay on the market. But this transformation will need more. But not only finance is important. Important is also to have broader general acceptance of having chemical industry in Europe, in Slovakia. Because not only motor fuels have a now negative tonality among consumers, but also chemical, plastics, etc. But the truth must be said that the chemicals cannot be produced from anything else, only from crude or from natural gas. Maybe in half a century or 100 years, yes, but now not. And therefore I'm advocating not only for, let's say, my industry, but also for steel makers, heavy industries in general, that we need and that we are welcome in this continent. Because the chemical industry will survive, but if not in Europe, then in Turkey, North America, Middle East, China. And then, Europe will be still consumer, but importers of these products. And I think it will be very detrimental to the whole economy.
Thank you so much for very fair assessment. Hopefully you will be the dinosaur that successfully evolves into some other creature. But I'll go back, Minister, to you, and please respond also. We're really eager to hear whether there will be a financial support to the chemical industry, and I'll follow up with another question later.
First of all, 2 remarks. Especially Slovnaft has a very good alternative to the production of gasoline and diesel. You can invest you can make reality investments because you have very good locality in Bratislava. So if you stop tomorrow the production of gasoline, you will start to building houses. with this fantastic locality. Okay, but the second one is, this was a joke, but the second is I think, very important thing. We are killing, in Europe we are killing a lot of industries. One of them is chemical industry, but also steel industry. 3 years ago, at that time I was member of European Parliament, and we voted about decreasing of CO2 production against 1990. The proposal which came from European Commission was 30%. And some green members of, some green MEPs proposed 40%. 2 years ago, 40%. And Parliament voted about this 40%, and so we have 40%. But now it is not enough, and we have more and more to increase. and the production which we will, the more and more to increase the number which we will decrease the production of CO2, and I think this is a very dangerous way. So actual European Commission proposed 55% against 1990, against the same year, like we are comparing since 10 or 15 years, 55%, and in the meantime, 55% is not enough. So European Parliament voted about 60%. Now the value 60% is valid, and this is crazy because what will happen? The steel plants, some chemical plants will close in Europe. China will produce the products which we will no more produce in European Union, and we will just import them. And they will produce the steel and the chemical products which more CO2 like we here in Europe. And this is, yeah, as I already told, this is crazy, and we should stop. We should stop this development. If we want really to help the auto industry, we should support the industry, this industry also in this way, and not to stop the producing of steel. And now to your question about the financial help. I can imagine some special kind of help, because if governments or European Union is requesting to decrease CO2 production, we should finance a big part of the decarbonization. Yes, I am generally I am against support from public money, with support with public money, but in this case we should make a big exception, because if we request decreasing of CO2, we should pay for that.
Thank you very much. And I'll go on the issue of the chemical industry back to Andy, because I know, as far as at least I understand how the batteries work, you also heavily rely on the chemicals. And there's this discussion about, first, where the raw materials are produced, but second, when you were describing this shortness of the supply chains. How do you see, from your perspective, how is Europe doing on supporting the chemical industry that is necessary for production of the green batteries?
It's interesting, for an automotive engineer, and I started out as a mechanical engineer, more and more it's not so mechanical. There's electrical, electronics, and now chemical. And the battery is clearly a question of chemistry. And therefore we need to evolve our skill base, and therefore we need to train our engineers in a manner which they can talk effectively and develop effectively in these new technologies. So it's really quite important that those skill sets are in this case in Slovakia or anywhere else in the world where you're manufacturing cars. So there's a fundamental point there, which is making sure that a country's training of its engineers is relevant to the future. And I'd say it starts there. And as I said, R&D is what makes things sticky. In terms of batteries, I reiterate, basically you need a short supply chain. You need, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Which comes first, the car or the battery? I don't know, but you need both. So investing in a country's battery capability is really important. And the last point is I think, a point of Darwinism. So what one needs to consider and continue the development of all of the options. So within the battery world, you need to look at the use of various chemicals or raw materials. So I would argue that the move towards battery electric cars is generally great, but you have unintended consequences, and one of those unintended consequences is the use of cobalt and the mining industry associated with cobalt. You need, therefore, to reduce the amount or even eventually eliminate the amount of cobalt. And I think a lot of R&D now goes into how you can reduce the amount of cobalt, and that's a great thing. Likewise, the battery industry needs to see some level of competition from, let's say, fuel cell or synthetic fuel. I don't think it's the right thing of a government, any government, to be myopic on the solution, rather to be myopic on the problem and allow the engineers to be concentrating on the solutions. And by putting that in competition with each other, Darwinism will create the best of breeds. It'll be better batteries and potentially better other alternatives as well. And as I say, I keep coming back to the fact that to make that happen and to have a future in the auto industry, any given country needs to invest in its R&D.
And may I ask a quick question that would only take you one word to respond? Where is your R&D currently based? Is it in Slovakia or elsewhere?
In the case of Inabat, one of the reasons that I was attracted to join this particular company is that it concentrates on its R&D, and its R&D is in Slovakia.
Okay.
And therefore, it's working with an American company as well, but basically, fundamentally, it's invested in its R&D in this country. And I think if you're simply going to make gigafactories, that's one thing. But you know, a lot of that is based upon licensing of technology from Asian suppliers. Right. Much better to create your own intellectual property. Intellectual property, again, I keep coming back to it, I'll keep saying it, it makes a technology sticky in a country, and that's what keeps production in a country. That's what creates wealth in the longer term. Really, really important.
Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, I'll go back to you, and the question is connected to what we're discussing now. A lot of people are, I would say, even panicking that Slovakia only has a few years until the car industry will start moving out. Because there's automation, and if it's automated, why build it in Slovakia and not elsewhere? And the second, because the critics would say that Slovakia is mostly manufacturing and not having the R&D that is making the car industry sticky. How do you respond to this criticism, and whether you think it's a relevant issue of concern?
Your question is connected with a question about Industry 4.0. I met a lot of people which I asked, what do you mean is Industry 4.0? And I think the best answer for Industry 4.0 is empty halls, empty production, people empty production halls. So it means we will have much more small coboters, which are collaborative, and the people will disappear. These simple workers which are doing simply tasks will no more exist in 5 or 10 years. Now we are today a part of a really big change, and it means we will need much more, for example, programmers or mechatronicals for the robots, but people will no more produce themselves. And at the same time, it will be necessary to get more. I hope this will be an automatically process that more and more R&D will come to Slovakia, because the production of the cars will be no more so easy on the requirements on the work. So I am not afraid about this. I think this will be a development. And again, the question is, what can the government do? How we can support? And as you thought already, I think it's really important to develop the new engines like batteries or hydrogens. But it's not clear today what will be in future the right engine of if hydrogen or batteries or electric. But it's definitely that we will need batteries. We have to invest in batteries. And so I am also about Innobat very happy, and I hope other companies will come to Slovakia. And finally, I would like to say the requesting on the works will be much more sophisticated on the production, because the easy works will do the robots, and the people will do much more sophisticated tasks. And I think this is a good development. We will need less people, but much more sophisticated. And if I have a look on the demographic development, so it's good, because we will have much more pensioners, but not so much working people in 20 or 30 years.
We'll make sure that next time we also have Minister of Economy to explain how we're going to educate the workforce. But for now, I would like to invite the audience to also address the questions to the panelists. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, if there's, give it a thought, please indicate to me that you would like to intervene and I'll bring you up. And then I will then go for now to Mr. Senkovic for your reflection on what Mr. Deputy Prime Minister was saying about how your industry can transform.
Yeah, we all in oil industry acknowledge that small passenger cars will be in the future powered by the batteries. Heavy-duty cars will be powered by probably hydrogen, train by hydrogen, airplanes by probably biofuels, biojets, hydrogen, ships by hydrogen, gas. And there will be some room, still some room for diesel, for sure, because of army and special forces and so. But it must be said also that we shouldn't be foolish that so that we do not repeat mistakes from the past. For instance, in 2006, there was a huge, let's say, call for bringing biofuels to the market in Europe. Legislation forced all countries to introduce ethanol, methyl ester of rapeseed, and different types of biofuels. And the argumentation was, we will decrease imports of crude oil from Russia, Middle East. We will reduce CO2 emissions. We will give more employment to the agriculture sector. We will decrease the price of fuels. Nothing happened over the period of last 15 years. We are importing palm oil from Indonesia, where the jungle is burned. We are bringing ethanol from Brazil, where small children are harvesting the sugar. Employment in Europe in agriculture is not larger. Prices of fuels are more expensive. We exchanged the dependence on Russia on the dependence to the Indonesia and ethanol. And there is real doubt whether there is CO2 reduction at all. And with batteries can be the same story. Okay, maybe the technology will progress rapidly, but bringing of cobalt, lithium from Angola, China, and from all the world will have carbon footprint. I don't know whether the Slovaks, Czechs, and I don't know, Finns, and then Romanians will be accepting massive development of the mining industry. The whole value chain, how the batteries are creating, then used, recycled, that brings also many questions into to this discussion. And as far as the auto industry in Slovakia, I am a big advocate to keep this industry here because it employs, I don't know how many hundreds, thousands of people directly, indirectly. But here I see also some problems because electric car has, I don't know, 2-3 times less parts than the standard fossil one. So certain reduction of the employment also in this industry will happen. And but despite this, I think we should, and I am really welcoming what Vice Premier said, that we should be the winner. If there will be job redundancy in Spain, let's say in the auto industry, I would like that these people will come to Slovakia, this position will come to Slovakia. So the business environment must be attractive here, because somebody will lose, but I don't want that Slovakia will lose.
Thank you very much, and please still think of questions and raise your hand. I'm watching you, but I'll go on this interesting point back to Andy. Andy, I'm sure you will say no, but are the batteries overrated? What gives you certainty that batteries will not follow the fate of the biofuels example that Mr. Senkovic was making. And also, I know there are questions that were also mentioned in the discussions yesterday about the CO2 effect of the battery production if you measure it against the whole supply chain.
Well, a battery car is not perfect. I mean, I mentioned already there's a lot of unintended consequences associated with it in the same way as when we moved from gasoline cars to diesel cars, there were unintended consequences as a result. So I don't think anybody should say that going to a battery electric car is perfection and we should finish there. But I would also say that battery electric cars are as inevitable as death and tax. We're going there, we've gone there. We've been developing as an industry. I personally have been developing the electric car for more than 15 years. And in terms of sales and in terms of acceptance, we've gone past the point of inclination. We've gone past the knee point in development. And you can see it in the monthly sales figures now that basically there's not only an acceptance of electric cars, but there's also a demand for electric cars. You can argue good, bad, or indifferent. It's just fact. So then I think that given that this is one of the fuels of the future, and remember, as has already been very clearly said, you need a battery, whether you're talking about hydrogen fuels, hybrid, or battery. Fundamentally, you need a battery. So having that technology in the country, and that's both production and technology in the country is incredibly important. But you've always got to be striving and developing the next generation because you need to address those unintended consequences. And I think it's interesting as I look to the focus of the company I'm associated with, that basically the reduction in cobalt is probably the next unintended consequence. So, reduce your usage on it and find other means of creating that energy density that you need. And I think that's the key. And that's, again, it comes back to this compelling need for innovation and the compelling need for well-trained engineers in any particular country.
I'm hopeful that this open admittance of imperfections gives you the best position to address them in the future. And we have a question in the audience, 2 questions. We'll start here and then the second question there. Wait. Don't touch it, please.
My question is primarily to Mr. Sulik. My question is regarding the CO2 emissions. We have learned, even during this conference, that 30% of the CO2 is coming from cars, which still keeps me question the 70%, which is not really talked about. So is the remaining industry to see some kind of restrictions in CO2 emissions in terms of regulation from a government, other than the usual cap and trade and cap and tax?
Thank you so much, and we'll take the second question straight away from there.
Good morning, my name is Dasha Mamrilova. I'm representing NVN Group, which is the producer of biofuels. So, of course, I would like to react what Mr. Senkovic said about the tackles of biofuel production and their contribution to emission savings. You must know that all the biofuels which are consumed in Slovakia are produced from local feedstock. And European Union has already tackled the issue of palm oil, so it will be lowered to 0. And all the ethanol produced here in Slovakia is produced from domestic feedstock, from corn and mainly from corn. And
I'm sorry, we need to keep them short. If you could.
Yes, just 2 more sentences. That biofuels currently represent more than 90% of renewable energy sources in Slovakia, so they are extremely important. And on European level, the fuel suppliers, they are already cooperating very, very closely with biofuels producers, because this is the way how to do their products more sustainable. Thank you.
Could he start?
Absolutely. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister appointed you as the first respondent, so please.
I will follow up after.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Slovakia is following all rules in terms of biofuels production. There is no doubt. but Slovakia is 5 million market and Europe is 500 million market, and hectares of jungles was burned in Indonesia and Malaysia and also Brazil for producing of biofuels that were burned in our engines, not in Slovakia, but in Germany, France, Italy. No doubt about this. And and I don't want to. The second generation of biofuels that is coming, that's the different story, because we will, or the producer of biofuels will consume the waste that is practically around us, and from this point of view, that is very welcome, for sure. But burning of corn, or the fruits, that has also ethical dimension. Yes, I had some ambassadors from the Muslim countries in Slovnaft, and we haven't touched biofuels because they told me our people in Egypt are hungry, and you are burning corn into producing for ethanol. So
Thank you very much, and we'll go now to Deputy Prime Minister.
So if we have 30% production of CO2 by cars and 70% by households and industry, and we want to decrease the production of CO2 by 60%, it's logical that all parts of all producers have to decrease. And for cars, we have some norms and regulation. Euro 6 is today valid. For industry, we have these CO2 vouchers. And I think this is also very tricky and very dangerous thing because, for example, our producer of aluminium in Slovalco, they have problem with these CO2 vouchers because they are not paying. They have 95% discount on distribution costs of electricity. 95% of I have to be direct. It means TPS. 95%. So they do not have problem with electricity, with the cost of electricity. They have problems because they are paying several 10 million euro. So now they are thinking about moving the production, or definitely stopping, because 50% Ovna is coming from Norway, stopping or moving somewhere outside of Europe. So I think I am asking if this is the right way, and I am convinced this is the wrong way, because our future, the wealth the wealth in future is coming from industry. Not society cannot be wealth and cannot be rich only from services. We need the industry, and if we will introduce more and more regulation which is bringing the industry away out of Europe, we will have a lot of problems in future. Also, I have a question.
Of course.
May I?
Of course.
Okay, to Andrew. You need for production of batteries, you need a lot of inputs, like cobalt, lithium. Do you think for all cars in the world, perhaps 1 billion, 1.5, I don't know, if say in 40, 50 years we would have only electric cars. Do you think there is enough of these inputs worldwide, or have you any information if there is enough of cobalt, of lithium?
No, and that's why I reference a lot around this unintended consequences. So you move from solving one problem and you create another, and that's why I think the capability of R&D in a given country, your country, is really important, because you need to chase the next solution. Now, undoubtedly, we already recognize that cobalt there's not enough cobalt, probably, but secondly, also mining it is difficult, and you also have some politically difficult countries where it comes from. So already people start to look at the next capability, whether it's silicon usage or whether ultimately you can get towards solid state. This is all around the Moore's curve and how you get down the Moore's curve as quickly as possible. But there will always be an unintended consequence, and you always need to be moving. And what you don't want to be as a country, I don't talk as a car maker, but as a country, you don't want to find yourself exposed by not having this under your control. If you have the R&D capability, then you have the possibility to ask the question and also motivate your own country in the same direction. If you're reliant on technology that is simply being purchased from China or Japan, then you're exposed, and you just have to follow the trend. You said it actually. You said it in the context of steel. By Europe losing its steel production, it's essentially moving the generation of CO2 somewhere else. It's not solving the CO2 problem, and I would have this.
It's not a solution.
It's not a solution. It's just a movement.
Yeah.
From that perspective, I also believe passionately in free market principles, but sometimes governments have to look at the impact of those free market principles and note that the playing field's not equal. And that, I think, is where government has a role to play in industry, in making sure that the playing field is level.
Just to compare electric with hydrogen, I know water we have enough.
Yes.
And it's easy to get.
Thank you very much, distinguished panelists. Unfortunately, the red light is flashing back there, which means our time is up. I would like to thank you for the very enticing conversation. And thank you very much to the audience for being with us. Please stay in your seats, because we're going to have another discussion that is going to happen straight after us. And I would like to welcome on this stage Minister Ivan Korczok, Minister of European and Foreign Affairs of the Slovak Republic, and Steve Clemons, who is going to moderate the session. Thank you very much.
This one? Okay, great. Thanks, Elena.